Nestled between the gnarled roots of forgotten time and the hazy whispers of twilight, the old bridge spanned across the Morwick River, a body of water as ancient and mysterious as the legends surrounding it. Local folklore was rife with tales of ghostly figures seen crossing the bridge at night, each story more chilling than the last, painting a spectral tableau that kept the superstitious at bay and attracted the curious and brave in equal measure. The bridge itself was a marvel of bygone engineering, its stones worn smooth by the passage of countless feet over centuries. Moss clung to its sides like the hands of the past refusing to let go, and at night, a thick fog often rolled in from the river, wrapping the bridge in a shroud that seemed to blur the line between this world and another. It was on a night like this, under a sliver of a moon, that Julian, a writer with a penchant for the macabre, found himself standing before the old bridge. Armed with nothing but his curiosity and a small flashlight, he intended to spend the night on the bridge, hoping to glimpse the apparitions for himself and find inspiration for his next tale. As the clock struck midnight, a cold wind began to howl through the trees, and the fog grew so dense that the other side of the bridge became lost to sight. Julian's flashlight seemed feeble against the oppressive darkness that enveloped him. It was then that the first of the night's many horrors made itself known. A soft sobbing echoed across the water, so pitiful and despairing that it tugged at Julian's heart. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, filling the night with its sorrow. Peering into the fog, Julian saw her, a woman in a gown of mist and moonlight, her feet barely touching the ground as she crossed the bridge. Her face was hidden by a veil of tears, but her grief was as palpable as the stones beneath Julian's feet, frozen in place. Julian watched as the woman faded into the fog on the other side, her sobbing gradually silenced. The writer's heart raced, not with fear, but with an exhilarating mix of terror and fascination. He had witnessed one of the bridge's lost souls, but this was only the beginning. No sooner had the woman's apparition vanished than a new presence made itself felt. The temperature dropped, and Julian's breath turned to mist in the air. A procession of figures emerged from the fog, dressed in the garb of centuries past. They moved silently across the bridge, paying Julian no heed, their faces blank and empty as though they were but shells of once living beings. Among them, a figure in tattered soldier's garb limped, its uniform stained with the dark hue of old blood. Its head turned slowly towards Julian, revealing empty eye sockets that seemed to stare into his very soul. A cold hand, insubstantial yet unmistakably real, brushed against his arm, sending shivers down his spine. The procession continued on, disappearing into the fog as silently as they had appeared, but the night was far from over. A malevolent chill settled over the bridge, and Julian sensed that he was no longer alone. A shadowy figure, darker than the night itself, loomed at the edge of his vision. It moved with an unnatural, jerking motion, as if it were not walking but being dragged forward by some unseen force. Its presence was suffocating, filled with malice and hatred so intense that Julian found it hard to breathe. The figure stopped just a few feet away from him, its features obscured by the darkness. Then, in a voice that was the sound of dry leaves and grave dirt, it whispered his name. Julian turned to run, terror lending speed to his feet, but the old bridge seemed to stretch into infinity before him, the fog growing thicker with each step. Just when he thought he could run no more, Julian reached the end of the bridge and stumbled into the clear night on the other side. Gasping for breath, he looked back, but the bridge was calm, the fog slowly dissipating as if nothing had happened. Dawn found Julian still there, staring at the old bridge in disbelief. The night's horrors were etched into his memory, a terrifying muse for his writing, but also a stark reminder of the thin veil between the living and the dead. As the sun rose, casting its light on the old stones. Julian knew he would never forget the haunting of the old bridge, nor the ghostly figures that crossed it. His story, when it was finally written, would be a testament to the night he walked among spirits, a tale of fear, fascination, and the unbreakable bonds of the past. In the heart of an ancient city, cloaked in the mists of forgotten times, there stood a quaint little antique shop, nestled between the remnants of cobblestone pathways and ivy-clad buildings. Its windows were dusted with the sands of time, and its door creaked on hinges that whispered tales of centuries past. The shop was a trove of mysteries, each artifact holding a story, a secret, a whisper from the past. But of all the enigmas it harbored, none was as unnerving as the painting that hung on the farthest wall of the dimly lit room. The painting was ensconced in an ornate frame, tarnished with age, its gold leaf peeling off like aged skin. The canvas depicted a scene of haunting beauty, a shadowy forest at twilight, where the trees seemed to contort in agony, reaching out with their gnarled branches as if to warn or perhaps ensnare. At the heart of the forest was a clearing, and in it, a figure cloaked in darkness, its features blurred, yet its eyes, oh, those eyes! They glowed with a malevolent light, piercing through the canvas, watching, waiting. The legend of the painting was as old as the shop itself. It was said to be cursed, or perhaps possessed. The tales varied, but the essence remained. Those who gazed upon the painting found themselves haunted by visions, tormented by nightmares, and, in some cases, driven to madness. It was as if the painting fed on their fears, their sanity, drawing them into its twisted realm. The shopkeeper, a wizened old man with eyes that had seen too much, seldom spoke of the painting. He warned those who asked to steer clear, to admire it from afar but never to stare too deeply into its abyss. But warnings are often but whispers in the wind to those enticed by the allure of the forbidden. It was on a stormy night, when the rain danced upon the cobblestones and the lightning painted the sky with streaks of terror, that Ethan, a young man with a penchant for the occult, entered the shop. He was drawn not by the promise of shelter from the storm but by the tales of the painting he had heard whispered in the shadowed corners of dimly lit bars. The shopkeeper eyed him warily as Ethan's gaze swept across the room, finally resting upon the painting. "Beware, young sir," the old man murmured, a note of fear lacing his words. "Some mysteries are best left unsolved, some secrets best left untold." But Ethan was not to be deterred. He approached the painting, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and fascination. As he stared into the canvas, he felt an inexplicable pull, a sense of being drawn into the depths of the forest, into the very eyes of the figure that lurked within. The shopkeeper found Ethan hours later, staring blankly at the painting, his eyes wide with an unspoken horror. He spoke not a word, responding to neither query nor command. It was as if his soul had been ensnared, trapped within the canvas. In the days that followed, Ethan was consumed by the painting. He spoke of voices in the night, of shadows that moved of their own accord, of eyes that watched him from the darkness. His descent into madness was swift, a chilling testament to the power that lay within the cursed canvas. And then, one night, he vanished. His room bore the signs of a struggle, but of Ethan, there was no trace. The only clue left behind was a scrap of paper, upon which was scrawled a single, chilling sentence: "It watches from the painting, and now, it watches through my eyes." The painting hangs still in the antique shop, its secrets untold, its curse unbroken. The shopkeeper no longer speaks of it, and those who know of its legend steer clear. But the painting waits, patient and hungry, for the next pair of eyes to lock onto its own, to be drawn into its embrace. And so, the legend grows, a cautionary tale of the dangers that lurk within beauty, of the shadows that dwell in the heart of art. For in the depths of the possessed painting, there lies a darkness that consumes, a malevolence that watches, waiting for the next soul to ensnare in its twisted grasp.